Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host Paul Rook, and as always, we're exclusive to the PA UK radio network. Um, as always, I am joined in the studio by the stupendous Kerry Greenaway and the stupendous Richard Clements. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello. How are you been this week?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
been a bit quiet, but yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I'll go with not too bad.
I've had a
Cool.
birthday in the house.
Oh,
Ooh.
My son has hit 17.
Oh dear.
It all goes downhill from here, dear.
Good
Yeah.
God, how did that happen?
If you thought it was expensive before, yeah.
We're getting into the realm of cars, aren't we?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, of course you will. Yeah.
Driving lessons and cars, everybody. So donations are being taken at GoFundMe at Kerry Greenaway.
Oh yeah, it's not cheap anymore. Yeah, driving lessons. Oh,
No.
dear.
No, that's
Lordy.
it. You wait till he wants the latest PS4, 5, or whatever it is.
No, he's talking about building his own PC.
Oh, awesome. That's even better.
Really? It's
Yeah.
even betterly expensive. Yes.
Yeah, but if he's going to build it himself, he's got to
Yes.
fund it himself. Otherwise, there's no point, is there?
Yeah, true.
Yes, Paul. And you know what he's done? He's come to me and he's gone, Mum, do you have any jobs that need doing? And I went, yes, darling. Loads of jobs. He went, how much? What? What? You actually want me to become your employer?
Yeah.
This is what we're now in the realms of. Like,
Yeah.
I'll do a job for you, but it's going to cost you because I need to, I need the money to buy.
Well,
The
in that
bits.
case, a really good suggestion would be, okay, you go to work for me and I'll stay at home. And then you could concentrate on your crystal business and your son can go out and earn your wages.
Now, there's a plan.
It is, isn't it?
There's a
Brilliant.
thought, yes.
Now, there is a thought. I'll have to have a word with my manager at work, shall I? See
Yeah,
how she
that's it.
responds to that one.
I
She'll
can
be like,
imagine.
no, I know what he's like.
Oh dear. After some of the scary stories I've heard about her, I can imagine exactly what she's going to be like.
Yeah.
Lovely. She is lovely. It's not so much if you're a customer, but she's lovely.
I'd say I'm not sure the customers would agree with you.
She's a manager. What do you expect?
Yeah.
Anyway, talking of creepy creatures, no, I'm joking.
Oh
I
dear.
do
I hope
hope
she doesn't listen
I
to
was going to
this.
say that she will kill me. She's the best manager in the world. I love her. I do, and I am actually being sincere on that one, everybody.
It sounds
God.
it, but
I
okay.
won't be
carry
telling
on.
her about this show.
That's what I've got on Facebook. I'll send her the.
No.
Oh
And
dear.
again, looking for a job, everybody out there. So donations could be sent to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, going back to the show, creepy
Yeah.
creatures. What sort of creepy creatures are we going with?
Well, last week we touched on the folklore of trees, didn't we?
We did,
And there
yes.
is a huge folklore surrounding trees and woods in regard to fairy lore and stuff like that. Well, that led us down into elementals in this ongoing discussion that we're having. And we suddenly whatever culture you go to, there are entities, I will call them, that we come across on a regular basis. And throughout
Yeah.
different cultures, they're called different names, right?
Oh, absolutely. You got like the gnomes, haven't you? And then you got Smurfs and things like that. You know.
Well, I don't think Smurfs fall into the category.
I don't know. They could be classed as sort of fairy folk, couldn't they?
I suppose modern day, yeah, I can
Yeah.
see.
See.
I can see where you're coming from, but I don't think
Yeah.
Smurfs. We'll leave Smurfs out of it.
Oh, don't worry. They're coming back.
No, but you get all sorts. You get elementals, which covers quite a broad spectrum, doesn't it, Kerry?
Yes, especially with fairies and stuff. Yeah, go for it.
I'm actually burying my head in my arms on my desk at this moment in time. But yes, when you think of like you mentioned gnomes, well, that could be dwarves from another
Yeah.
culture. You know what I mean? And hobgoblins, and all sorts of weird and wonderful creatures going from, mainly the European area, Italy, Greece, when you think Spain, when you think, the Nordic countries,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
all of those things. Yeah.
I think as well the Grimm brothers might have had a small part to play in this.
Well, remember, they were taking their influences from tales that were being told. So those folklore was already in place by then.
Mm.
But and the Grimms just documented it,
Yeah.
basically. So those things, but yeah, that would definitely put it more into the psyche of people and made it more broader across the world, really, because, well, when we did the Grimm's fairy tales show, we learned that it was one of the most prolific books, nearly up there with the Bible, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And not only that, it was like not as nice as some of the fairy tales come across these days.
They're all anecdotal, though.
Yeah.
There's never any proof that they exist.
Well, no.
It's all anecdotal.
Yeah.
Now, let's have a little look at the Greeks first of all, because we're going to get onto. Now, I've taken this show down into a realm where the boys weren't quite expecting. I think they kind of expected me to go, right, a hobgoblin, and then relate a tale to do with a hobgoblin and, stuff like that. But I've gone down a different route, which did it surprise you?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, yeah.
Why did it surprise you?
What's all this stuff?
Yeah.
Well, it just surprised me. It's and to be quite honest, I thought you were going to perhaps go down the route, this is a goblin. Goblins come from, I don't know, Scandinavia. They are suspected of hanging around underneath bridges, or is that trolls? It's one of the two. Anyway,
trolls. Trolls like goats as well, goat cheese and stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go down that route.
Mm-hmm.
No.
The more I researched elementals, the more it became about energetic signature and corporal beings existing on different dimensional planes.
Mm-hmm.
And the naming of that was just cultural reference rather than being a individual race, as it were.
Yeah,
so the races the individual races relate to elements.
Yeah.
And it's elements that sort of like cross all board across all sort of different cultures and stuff, isn't it? And it is basically, from what I could work out from reading some of your research, was it's basically the four main elements of earth, air, fire, and water, isn't it?
Correct. But each of those have a unique energy signature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so water elements don't cross over so much into earth elements, and earth elements can't cross over into air and stuff like that. Even though there are corporeal beings that can incorporate both of those, they become a different race completely. It's incredibly interesting. So that's where we wanted to go to. So this is actually where demon comes from, or daemon.
Yeah.
Right, this is actually from the Greek. Now, this is from the Greek belief system. Now, this incorporates what we would know as thought forms, or spiritus loci, which are basically a belief system that builds up a character in relation to a specific place, like a guardian spirit.
Right.
Now, they would call them daemons, and that would be Daemons.
Right.
Right, so basically, chuck out the A and you've got demon.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, but this is where this belief in #demon comes from, because that's where the word comes from. It's the otherworldly beings are demons or daemons. It's Greek, right? But they would link their daemons to these otherworldly beings relating to the four elements.
Right.
Okay, but this is where we get the spiritus loci from, which is an spirit that's attached to a particular area. Now, we come across this in the UK in regard to sacred pools, don't we?
Oh, right. So I take it the loci was what means location, does it?
Mm.
Yeah, the spirit of the location.
Right, I see.
Do you know that explains so much already, because you've got these one particular big American ghost hunter on that's very popular in the UK, that keeps going on about demons. Um, when he when he comes across one of these elementals, especially the air for when he passes wind and water when he wets himself, he's out of there because it's demons.
Yeah,
So
he doesn't
that's
stand
two.
much.
No,
He
exactly.
does.
That's two of the elements already. God help him if the place catches alight as well.
Yeah,
That's three then.
and then there's a gale at the end. He's knackered.
Yeah,
Oh my God, you two.
that's it. So that does explain so much and why he goes on about demons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there were some great philosophers that came. I'm going to go back to. I just don't even know how to respond to the guys tonight. They're off on one tonight, is all I can say. Right, there were some great philosophers that came out of Greece. Socrates was
Yes, yes.
one.
Yeah, I've all heard of him.
Exactly. Now, he would talk about his teacher, his guardian teacher. Right now, come on, modern, Carl Jung, Freud, all those kind of people would have said it would be his archetypal types that he was actually getting in touch with and getting this information from. He didn't believe that. He believed it was one of these daemons that he was actually consorting with to get the information that actually proved fruitful for his philosophy work, the fantastic work. And the other
Yeah.
one would have been Plato as well. Where these thoughts and these ideas that are so beyond their time were coming from, and they related that to a daemon, to an elemental being that they were conversing with to bring that forward. So that's interesting in itself. And as I say, the more psychology moved on, we would have looked at that as an archetypal type, that they were going that deep into like a meditation and thoughts, that they were actually examining characters that come up in everybody's psyche at some point or other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, could it even be sort of like a spirit guide if he's meditating that much?
It could be. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
know, do we? We don't know the form that took, whether that was an actual spirit, whether or not that was just like a guardian spirit, as in an elemental type spirit, whether that was an archetypal type from his subconscious. We don't know.
Or
But
or Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
or one of those.
Yeah.
One of those, yeah.
Kind of don't think it's that one, but hey, who am I
No, but hey,
to argue?
it just popped in there.
Good God. Good God. Right. So anyway, fast forward a little. It was a guy actually called Paracelsus. Paracelsus,
Paracelsus. Yeah.
who actually solidified this idea of the elemental links to these elements, the living forces behind the elements. Right. But we're going to look at his life, because once you work out his life and how he was multicultural in his understanding, then you'll understand how he came up with this idea, how it was an idea that came to him. And actually, when we started looking further at the various elements, it always links back to him relating these entities to the individual elements. Boom! How'd you like that one then?
Yeah.
Get
And
in.
I was going through the research earlier, and yes, he was well travelled, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Now, lovely Paracelsus is otherwise known as.
Here we go.
Yes, let's have a go at this name. This is a name and a half, everybody. Philippus Aurelius Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim.
That sounds like a Harry Potter spell, doesn't it?
Mate, I think I've just conjured up my very own Greek daemon by saying that.
Yeah.
He was actually a physician, a philosopher, and an alchemist. And that's sort of how he went about his business. He was actually a man of science.
Yeah.
Right. So let's have a look at his little life. He was born in November in 1493 in Switzerland.
All right, so he's European then.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, he's well published, and he is I don't know, what would you say? A forerunner medical man?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's gotten down as a physician, yeah, and physicians, they would have dabbled in alchemy, very much a man of his time, yeah, and he would have been looked upon as quite a highly educated person, I should imagine.
I
Yeah,
would think
I was going
so.
to say, like, alchemists normally did dabble in the sciences, and medical isn't too far away from that, is it?
Yeah,
So I would have thought definitely forerunner.
Yeah, well, he was very poor. He was actually born to an impoverished German doctor and chemist. So he's surrounded by um, a physician and chemistry and all those things in the home. His mother actually died when he was very young, and his father then moved to Villach in southern Austria. Now, this is where how can we shorten this? What we're going to call him? Parcel?
Parcel, yeah,
Can we call him Parcel, everybody? Yeah, we'll get away with
yeah,
that. Parcel attended the Berkshire, which was founded by the wealthy Fugger family, who were bankers, basically. And that's where his father was teaching
I'm sorry,
chemical.
what family?
Fugger.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Or Fugger.
That
It
I
might
would
be
say.
Fugger.
I think go with Fuga because the other one sounds like something else.
I think that's the only time we mention them.
yeah,
Okay.
Just saying. They were basically a family of bankers or merchant bankers that basically built a school, and youngsters were being trained there. And his dad taught there. He was teaching chemical theory and practice. And then the youngsters were then trained. This was all to do with mining operations in gold, tin, and mercury, and iron, aluminium, copper, and sulfate ores. So there's money to be made in ores, right? So the
yeah,
Oh,
merchant bankers
definitely.
are interested in this. So they're basically training up youngsters to make them more money.
yeah. To sort of go into the mining industry and at the time, and a budding alchemist would be interested in that, particularly for the lead, I should imagine.
Well, all sorts of things. I mean, gosh, there's quite some expensive minerals in there. So
Yeah,
this is all mineral training. This is all geology. This is chemical composition and geology we're looking at here for the good of the merchant bankers, which is, okay, if they're going to put their money to good use, then training up youngsters isn't a bad thing to do. So,
no,
and give them that. Now, young Parcel, he learned of metals that grow in the earth. He watched the transformation of metallic compounds in smelting vats, and this led down the alchemist route of transmutation from lead into gold. Well, he'd seen the process of a hard core mineral transmuting into liquid form, and then that could be molded. Then can we take it a step further and actually add chemicals to it to turn it into a different metal completely, like gold, right?
well,
Yeah.
yeah, that was sort of a lot of people say that was the alchemist's ultimate goal, and you could sort of, yeah, and I can see where they would sort of get that from, and if they're looking into a crucible, whilst you've got a solid metal going into a crucible, and then it turns to liquid, yeah, and the liquid you can play around with, sort of add bits and take bits out.
It was a very popular idea at the time.
Hmm.
This turning a cheap metal, a more readily available metal, into something that was a lot more worthy, like gold. Thank God they never did, because could you imagine, right? Gold, even now, um, gold bullion. They talk about our gold reserves, don't they, in the
Yeah,
banks? And it is actually a block of gold,
yeah.
right? And the country's wealth is dependent on our gold reserves, apparently. I'm not very good with economics, but it's quite a rare substance, effectively, gold,
It is.
Oh yeah,
right?
Apparently, there's
it's
only like 1% of the Earth that is gold.
Hmm.
it is finite gold. I mean,
Mm.
there's only so much of it. I mean, there's not any more of it.
Mm,
Once it's gone, it's gone.
mm,
Or once it's been used up and sort of melted into ingots, that's it.
mm, exactly. So you can understand why they would want to produce a lot more of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there has been like claims that scientists have discovered asteroids full of gold and things like that they want to pull in and make money out of.
That's how expensive it is.
Yeah.
Pure gold, this is. Not the stuff that you get in jewellers, quite frankly. The percentage of that is very low in reality, but real pure
That's
gold.
why you got different carats of gold, doesn't
Exactly. And also, you think gold, how it affects people. Gold itself has an allure, shall we say, partly because of its rareness, but it does have a funny kind of hold over people.
Yeah.
You think
It does. I mean, and as I've said on the show in the past, I do a bit of metal detecting, or used to a lot. I mean, and I haven't done it for a while, but you know, you always had gold in the back of your mind. I mean, I've found silver, which is quite a good buzz, but I haven't found that bit of gold yet.
But mixing chemicals or mixing elements like that is quite a common practice, because even like coins, even the copper coins, it's not just copper they've got other minerals in with it, and that's how they date them, and they can also um, determine what mines throughout the ages these elements have come from,
Yeah.
because of the composition of the element.
Exactly. Chemistry, chemical composition. Now, in 1507, Parcel joined the many wandering youths who travelled throughout Europe. Basically, it became a thing. Let's go travelling. We talk about taking a gap year now. Well, this is nothing new. Back in the Middle Ages, middle wealth kind of people would go and do this the same to gain life experience and actually travel from university to university, learning from the great teachers that were actually based at the different universities. Now, Parcel himself, I love the fact that we've shortened his name. Parcel himself is said to have attended the universities of Basel, Tübingen, Vienna, Wittenberg, Leipzig, Heidelberg, and Cologne. In 5 years, he's gone to each of these universities and learned.
Yeah.
Left him wanting, though.
So he wasn't too impressed.
He wasn't overly impressed with that. He later wrote that he wondered how, and I'm going to quote, the high colleges managed to produce so many high asses.
Well, there you go.
Ooh, little jibey there, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, choking on my parcel.
It's
Yeah,
almost like all these paranormal courses that spring up online, and then the people who do them think they're like qualified parapsychologists and things like that, and they're not.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it's the same principle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you learn the
It just
basics.
yeah, but
It's the attitude that goes with it,
it
isn't
is.
it?
It's the attitude after, isn't it?
It is,
So
but
they
we have come across this not just in that way. We come across this in certain divides within the paranormal as well. Like the academics won't talk to the ghost hunters, and the ghost hunters won't talk to, the live streamers, and the live streamers won't talk to. We see that level of divide, but in the paranormal. But I'm sure if we even, I've said this a million times as well, no matter what hobby or whatever area you work in, you probably find this too.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
In the
You
stock
get it.
market, the stockbrokers probably don't talk to the, I don't know, the accountants. The accountants won't talk to the whoever. You know what I mean? There's probably the same as same sort of snob divide going on there as well. The hedge funders and stuff like that. Anyway,
Yeah. So let's
now
get back to what did you say,
Parcel.
parcel? Yeah.
Yeah, Parcel. He upset. He's he upset quite a few people over the years, but he upset the traditional attitudes of the academics. Basically, he said the universities do not teach all things. Well, that's going to upset a few people, right?
Well, yeah.
So a doctor must seek out old wives, gypsies, sorcerers, wandering tribes, old robbers, and such outlaws, and take lessons from them. A doctor must be traveller. Knowledge is experience. I hold him right on this.
Yeah.
I would say so as well. You know,
I,
that's quite a bold statement when you first started to read it out. But then I thought, no, hang on a minute. He's right. You've got to be well travelled. You've got to be you've got to have a sort of like a good knowledge of the world you live in. And you have to accept that, warts and all.
Yeah.
definitely.
And also, he's dead right, because those were the people that were working with plants and what was classed as pagan practice of medicine. They were looked down on. The old midwives that used to, use the herbs and make up tinctures and, knew the properties of all the plants, to make up medicines. Well, these academics took that away from them, went, oh, no, 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 we can't do this. We'll do it the proper scientific way. But they should have worked together. And where would
Yeah,
we have been now if they had worked together? But there became
exactly.
a snobbery divide within that. So they were basically, what do they know? Well, they're the ones dealing with day-to-day injuries on the farms and, the villages and stuff like that. You couldn't afford a doctor.
Mm.
I mean, when we think of Culpeper, we've talked about him in previous shows. I think that was the Harry Potter show.
Yeah.
Culpeper wrote a book about the medicinal properties of plants that were in his area. He was
Mm.
walking through fields and getting inspiration from the plants that were surrounding him and documenting that. That went, the sales of that book went crazy because that became accessible to everyday person that couldn't afford a doctor. And then you've got these doctors that people can't afford teaching in universities to people that will then charge prices that the normal populace can't afford. So Parcel has got a really good understanding, bearing in mind he's come from an impoverished background. He understands this. So he's sort of looking at the more wealthier doctors and thinking, hold on a minute, that's all well and good, but you're completely discounting this. You need to talk to everyday people. They might be able to tell you a way to treat anemia in a
Mm.
way that we've not looked at before. They
Yeah.
used to actually, one of the old ways of treating anemia was actually to drive a rusty nail into an apple, leave it overnight, take the rusty nails out, and then eat the apple, because the iron from the nail gets infused into the apple.
Yeah,
And that was a
because
way of getting iron into the body. But a physician in a hospital wouldn't say that.
No, he'd go take these pills.
So he's looking at this and seeing a divide there and actually saying, well, this is all well and good because they don't teach all things. You must look at the whole spectrum, not just a single way of doing things. I think he's got a really good point.
He has, but even the logistics of that is pretty much impossible because there might be a little bloke in deepest, darkest Africa somewhere
Hmm.
in a hole somewhere,
Hmm.
and he might know a better way, but we're not going to ask him.
No, but this is why he's saying you must be travelled.
Yeah,
A doctor must be a traveller because you're learning and gaining knowledge and experience every time you do that.
yeah, but you still might miss the little bloke in the shed in deepest, darkest Africa. He
One
might
well,
walk
yeah,
person,
straight
right?
past.
But if all doctors were doing this, imagine the knowledge base that was built
Oh,
built
absolutely.
up.
Yeah.
Particularly when you think of missionaries that started going out into more deeper spaces, more remote areas, should I say.
Mm.
Now, unfortunately, Parcel is not a well-spoken individual. He's quite crude in how he puts things. We're going to hear a few quotes over the next time. He's very bald, shall we say. He doesn't have diplomacy skills that would be expected in, shall we say, proper company.
right, yeah.
Okay. And he hasn't got a lot of subtlety about him. He speaks as he finds, basically.
I like him already.
Yeah. So he upsets a lot of people when he speaks, even though the message, what he's saying, is actually very relevant.
Mm.
Yeah. Now, some of the recognized people in the day wouldn't listen to him because of how he put it.
Right.
It upset them too much.
Okay. What's their
Now, he was supposed to have graduated from the University of Vienna with a baccalaureate in medicine in 1510. He then went to the University of Ferrara in Italy, where he was free to express his rejection of the prevailing view that the stars and the planets controlled all the parts of the human body, which is what they were teaching at the time. Right? Oh, wow, Venus is in retrograde or whatever, I don't know. So that is why we're having a lot of, chest infections at the moment.
Yeah.
And he's
But
like,
then it's not
what?
too far off from the truth, though, is it? Because we do know that gravitational pull from the moon affects the tides, but it also, because we're 80% water, it also does affect us.
No medical or no official proof of that, though, as we
Oh,
found out.
you ask anyone that works in the NHS on the
I
A&E
don't disagree.
departments.
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you, but where there
Yeah.
have been studies, and the studies are not proving any different from any other time of the month, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they actually tried to scientifically prove that, it came up.
Yeah, they've asking the wrong ones.
No, they were looking at incidences. They weren't looking at individual case studies. They were looking at incidences of like, I don't know, how many violent instances happened on, say, the full moon to how many happened 2 weeks earlier on a Friday. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? And there was no difference, believe it or not. I know, shocker, everybody. But anybody, like Paul says, to be honest with you, anybody that works in certain professions can call when a full moon is without actually following it.
Yeah.
Psychiatric wards have to use more subduers. What's the word?
Yeah.
What's the word? It's not subduers, is it?
Tranquilizers.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, anyway, we've got off topic.
Got off topic there a bit,
Right.
yeah.
But he rejected that perspective. But he did actually receive his doctoral degree in 1516 from the University of Ferrara. So every university he goes to is passing with flying colours.
Well,
he's not a thick man. He just doesn't agree with their opinion. But he learned their opinion because he got the doctorate. So what he's putting down on paper is obviously agreeing with what they've taught, but in his head he's going, this don't make sense to me.
Yeah, so he's doing what it takes to get the to get the accreditation, but he's going off on his own, I suppose. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, in his head anyway, and putting it out there, but he's passing the exams. This is where they reckon he began using the name Paracelsus, which means above and beyond Celsius. That's a bit arrogant, right?
Yeah, right there.
Right there. That says it all about his character, right? In fact, from now on, I think I'm going to be called Paracelsus.
Yeah, go for it.
In fact, we could call your convention the Paracelsus. Above and beyond.
Above and beyond, yeah.
And his new name actually reflected the fact that he regarded himself as even greater than Aulus Cornelius Celsus, who was a renowned first century Roman medical writer. So in those circles, calling yourself Paracelsus was like, who the hell does this man think he is? Right? Unbelievable.
Very learned.
Now, soon after he took his degree, he spent many years wandering through almost every country in Europe. It included England, Ireland, and Scotland. He took part in the Netherlandish Wars as an army surgeon, so he's practicing what he preaches and learning every single step of the way. He went to Russia. He was captured by the Tatars. He escaped into Lithuania and went south into Hungary. In 1521, he then served as an army surgeon in Italy. He ended up in Egypt, Arabia, the Holy Land, and finally Constantinople. Everywhere he went, he
The
sought.
land was sure to go.
He sought out every learned person he could who practiced alchemy.
Right.
Alchemy led to medical treatments. And this is where he made the link between the latent forces of nature and how to utilize them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Definitely.
He wrote He who is born in imagination discovers the latent fortress of nature. Beside the stars that are established, there is yet another imagination that begets a new star and a new heaven. This new understanding that is coming to is so linked with nature, and that's not cosmic nature, it's nature that surrounds him, that he's experiencing, that he's being taught, and he makes this link.
Yeah.
Very profound.
I love this guy, I tell you.
Yeah.
In 1524, he returned to his home in Villach to find that his fame for his many miraculous cures had preceded him. He was subsequently appointed town physician and lecturer in medicine at the University of Passau in Switzerland. And, you know, he travelled, but students then travelled to hear his lectures.
Right, yeah, so he obviously, yeah. So he was obviously well up there, especially if his reputation preceded him.
Mm,
The
yeah.
student becomes the master.
He certainly had become a master by now. Now, a program of one of his lectures that was on the notice board of the university invited not just the students, but anyone and everyone, which actually upset the authorities. It was an open invitation, basically, to saying, I don't care who attends. If you want to listen,
Yeah.
you're welcome to. You know, it's not. It's not exclusive. It's inclusive.
Yeah, it's
And that
information
upset.
for everybody.
Exactly.
Mm.
Now, 10 years earlier, do you remember we talked about the German theologian? I can never say this word.
Theologian.
Him and religious reformer, Martin Luther.
Yeah.
He'd actually circulated his thesis on indulgences.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
so there was a sort of
Forerunner.
there was a forerunner in that, yeah, because he took on the religious establishment.
Yeah. So Martin Luther was kind of like a inspiration, I would say, for Parcel. He actually said, why do you call me a medical Luther? I leave it to Luther to defend what he says, and I will be responsible for what I say. That which you wish to Luther, you wish also to me. You wish us both in the fire. Knowing that the messages he was sending out was basically the same. It was inflammatory to an established acceptance of who should be accessible to certain information. Luther is out there going, no, this isn't just for the priests and people like that, it's for everybody. And he's doing this in regard to medical learning.
Yeah. He's making it inaccessible to the masses, yeah.
He's also quite, in his actions, quite inflammatory as well, because 3 weeks later, in June the 24th, 1527, in front of the university where he's doing his lectures, he actually burned the books of Vicenza, who was the Muslim prince of physicians, and those of Greek physician Galen. He was basically saying, these are crap. Don't even bother using these. You come to my lectures, you are not going to be learning about these guys, right?
Yeah.
But those were the ones that people were learning from. Those were the ideas and the set in stone scientific ways of doing things that every university was trying to teach. He was going, no, don't even think about reading. Don't come to my lecture and expect this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? That incident stuck in people's minds. Right? Basically, Luther had done something similar at the Elstergate in Germany. He'd burned a papal bull that had threatened excommunication because Luther was going, I don't care.
I don't care,
what you say. I'm going to do it anyway. And basically, this is what I mean. I think Luther was a bit of an inspiration for Parcel at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see them both sort of. I reckon if they ever met, they must have got on famously.
I think they may have done. Now, he remained a Catholic. Parcel was actually a Catholic. However,
Right.
he suspected that his books were placed on the Index Expurgatorius, which is basically books that are said to be immoral or against Catholic religion. So although he was Catholic, he also recognised that the message he was sending out wouldn't have been received well by the Catholic Church.
Yeah, so his books were earmarked. Yeah.
Not only that, but he would lecture in his language of German. He wouldn't do it in Latin. And again, that makes it more accessible to the masses and less to the academic.
Yeah.
That's exactly the same as what Luther done. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can see where he took his inspiration from.
Yeah. Because the last thing the rulers want is people to understand and what they're reading.
Mhm.
Similar to Dolly, really.
Yeah.
He reached the peak of his career at Basel, and in his lectures, he stressed the healing power of nature and denounced the use of methods of treating wounds, such as padding with moss or dried dung that prevented natural draining. He would state that the wound must drain, because if you want to prevent infection, nature's going to heal the wound all by itself. So you don't pack it with dirt, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a smart move.
Not necessarily a good one. He attacked many other medical malpractices at the time. I would love him to be around today. He went against the worthlessness of pills, salves, infusion, balsams, electuaries, fumigants, drenches, all those kind of things. He was going, look, nature's going to do some of this stuff. We don't need this stuff. Why are we doing this stuff?
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And it ended up leading him into disrepute. So the local doctors, apothecaries, and magistrates all kind of turned on him, and he ended up leaving Basel, headed straight to Colmar, and then 50 miles north of the university, Upper Alsace, which is about 50 miles away from the university.
Yeah.
He travelled again, started travelling, stayed at various places with friends, and then travelled for 8 more years. And he was writing while he was travelling.
Yeah.
So he revised a lot of manuscripts during this time, put new treatises out there, and publication. His publication. Oh God, the grammar on that one was awful, weren't it, guys? I think I went around our houses to get that
Yeah,
word.
that's it. You got there in the end, so.
It's because I'm trying to remember what the book's called. De Grossen Windarksny. Basically, a great surgery book.
Right.
He
Yeah.
restored it, extended it, and the reputation he earned at Basel, he became actually very wealthy from this book. And royalty was then going, wow, get him in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so he's now become renowned again. So he goes from being renowned to being disreputed, in disrepute, and then renowned, and then back to disrepute again.
Yeah.
Right. Now, it was in this second period of the royalty being sought and his book going good and he's getting lots of money. He actually returned to Villach again to see his father. Unfortunately, his father had died 4 years earlier.
Oh, right.
Oh.
Sad.
Yeah.
In 1541, Parcel himself actually dies in mysterious circumstances at the White Horse Inn in Salzburg. He was actually there under an appointment for the Prince Archduke Ernst of Bavaria.
Ooh.
But throughout his time, he wrote a clinical description of syphilis,
That would come in handy, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He maintained that the disease could be successfully treated by carefully measured doses of mercury compound taken internally.
Yeah.
Right, which
Well, yeah,
mercury is known as, mercury. That's
yeah,
not.
I
liquid
know that
silver,
was
isn't it?
used.
But
Mhm.
Yeah, that was
yeah, I
used to
suppose
treat
technically
syphilis. Yeah.
it does cure it because eventually you die of mercury poisoning. So,
Not if you do it with carefully measured doses. That's the key.
well, yeah, I
That is the
suppose.
key, yeah.
That's the key to it. He also stated that the miner's disease, which is silicosis, resulted from inhaling metal vapors and was not a punishment from sin by the mountain spirits, which is what it had been believed before.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, I can see that, yeah. Miner's lung, they call it, don't they?
Mhm.
Sort of like coal miners, and, it's just
Mhm.
dust and the conditions you work in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the first to declare that if given in small doses, what makes a man ill can also cure him. Now, when you think about it, think of hay fever. What do they say now about hay fever? Rather than
It's
going,
it's your local honey, isn't it? That's supposed to
exactly.
help
Yeah.
fight your allergy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does
Like,
that
it's got to be
contain...
local.
Yeah.
Like for you, Kevy, it'd be Essex honey. Is the one that you need to take every daily or whatever.
It would actually be more local than that.
More local, yeah, sort
So
of
there's
like
a farm.
if you know an apiarist somewhere, yeah,
Yeah, so
close
I
to
would
you.
really close to me. It'd be the closest honey supplier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just take Piriton.
Or just take a pill. But I found with hay fever pills that they don't all work.
Okay.
There's loratadine and there's another one, centrifugal. I don't know.
Loratadine, isn't it?
That
One of them.
loratadine, yeah, that one. And then there's another one as well
Mm.
that's generally marketed out there, and they don't always work. So I've tried the nasal sprays, but then I tried honey, and what makes me ill cures me. What do bees feast on? Pollen. So you
Yeah.
build up a natural immunity to the pollen that's in your area, and that works, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
This is basically early practice of some level of homeopathy.
Yeah.
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 Because they tend to sort of, and their mantra is treat like with like, isn't it?
Exactly. Now, Parcel is also said to have cured many people in a plague-stricken town in Sturzburg. No, Sturzing even, in the summer of 1534. Now, this is quite disgusting, right? He made a pill basically of bread that contained a minute amount of the patient's excrement, their poo, that he had removed on a needle point, therefore saying that by feeding them what is making them ill cured them. So basically, he gave them plague-stricken poo on a piece of bread, and that was said to have cured a lot of people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that one, but okay.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that one, Paul. I don't.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not going to practice that one at all.
No, but then again, how often do we get the plague these days? We don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
He was first to connect goitre with minerals, especially lead, in drinking water. So he prepared and used new chemical remedies, including those containing mercury, sulfur, iron, and copper sulfate. These are all toxic minerals, thus uniting medicine with chemistry.
Mhm.
Right.
His first publication of London Pharmacopoeia was indicates this as well, basically. Yeah.
Mhm.
So he's a forerunner. He's doing this in like the early, in mid 1500s. In 1618, a book is actually written about this, saying these are good things to use. Yes, they're toxic, but used in the right doses.
Dosage.
This is all metallurgy.
To cure your gout. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He contributed substantially to the rise of modern medicine, including psychiatric treatment.
Yeah, because they're given lithium, aren't they?
Right, now, it's Carl
For
Jung himself.
severe mental illness.
Yeah. Carl Jung wrote that we see in Paracelsus even not only a pioneer in the domains of chemical medicine, but also in those of an empirical psychological healing science. He's not just looking, he's looking at dis-ease, not disease. He's looking at dis-ease. Can the mental mind affect the physical body? And how can we use nature to implement those changes?
Mm.
We talk about our environment impacting our well-being. He's looking at that in a more medical way. That's a crossover there between the
Yeah.
psychological, environmental, and our physical well-being, and the dis-ease that causes. I get very excited about this guy.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Now, he absorbed so many varying belief systems through his travels, right? And, when we start looking at Chinese astrology, what happens in Chinese astrology, it breaks down into various animals, and they live in different houses, and those houses link to the elements, and those have different personality traits.
Yeah.
And then we go into Greek mythology and spirits of places that have water. Those waters have an energy signature. He's looking at the chemical compound of those. Do they have healing properties? Why do they have healing properties? Let's look at the chemical compound of that. He's looking at that. He's taking these belief systems and looking at them from a scientific perspective and coming up with a whole different basis for medical and psychiatric knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite something, isn't it?
Isn't it just?
Mm.
And this is where he broke it down into elements: fire, air, water, and earth.
Excellent.
And then varying creatures, entities, energetic forms took a life of their own from the teachings of Paracelsus even.
Paracelsus.
Good old.
Good old parcel.
Now, he actually believed that those elements would break down into two forms, right? So you'd have one that was subtle and vaporous and a gross. So you've got one that's intangible and you've got one that's tangible. Okay, so one you can touch basically, and one that you can't.
Right.
So let's look at air. It becomes it's twofold. It splits into twofold. So you've got the atmosphere, which is intangible and volatile, and he would class this as spiritual air.
Yeah.
And then you've got the air that you breathe. We know it's there.
Mm.
Yeah, we know what it consists of.
Yeah.
So there's his two groupings, as it were, the intangible and the tangible. Fire, we know that it's visible, but invisible as well. Yeah, so you've got the fiery, flamey bit that we all see, touch, it burns, scary. Yeah, but then you've got the spiritual, ethereal flame that is intangible.
So what would that be? More like the heat or something?
No, think of it more like when you get passionate about something.
Right. Okay.
It's a flame. You become burning with desire
So
for
something
something.
internal then.
Effectively, but you can have that external as well. When you go to a place, you feel that it's atmospheric, isn't it? You could feel
Yeah.
like
Okay.
just before a storm, think of the electricity in the air.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's something you feel
it's
within your body, sort of
it's
thing, rather than a.
intangible. Exactly, it's a
Yeah. Okay.
vibration.
I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
that.
It's
Yep.
like
I understand that.
they class it as a spiritual. It's very ethereal. You know it's there, but you can't. It's not burning like a real flame, but you see a real flame in the fire.
Yeah.
Okay, so when
Makes
you
a good
think
metaphor, doesn't it?
exactly, when you think of water, right? I don't even need. There's a chemical composition for water, right?
Yep.
Right, but water is about flow and fluidity, and we see that in nature. We see that in the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we see that in the planetary movements. It's fluid. It's never static.
Yeah.
Yeah, and oh, it's crazy, isn't it? When you think about it, even the Earth itself, it's always moving. It has its own
Yeah.
pressures and its own, so we don't see it. It's intangible, but we know it
Well,
happens.
that's it, isn't it? It's on the surface, it's
Mm-hmm.
solid, and it doesn't go anywhere. But underground, it could be described as fluid
Mm-hmm.
because it can move, especially if water runs through it as well. It turns it into sort of mud that pushes stuff along. So yeah, I can see that.
Exactly. So he goes, right, there's the gross, that's what we live in.
Mm.
And then there's the spiritual side of things that we don't see. And from there is living organisms that live within the elements, that they're there. We can't see them because they're on a different vibration. It's the spiritual side. In the same way as we are gross, see us, touch us, feel us, connect with us, it doesn't end there. How can it end there when you've got this other side to nature that's surrounding us and these elements that surround us, they have a whole different world that just because we can't see it doesn't mean say it isn't there.
Mm.
Right, and the combination of those create and construct living organisms.
Right.
Interesting.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Now, we've said right at the beginning of this that various civilizations had belief in these kind of spirits, these entities, these daemons. Greek, Rome, Egypt, China, India, they all believed in it. Just because they called it one thing doesn't mean to say it didn't exist in another culture. It might just have had a different name, right? So
Yeah.
you're thinking satyrs, sprites, goblins, mermaids, nymphs, fairies, lairs, fauns, dryads. The names go on and on and on. And humans knew and felt that these entities were surrounding them and held them in the highest esteem, worshipped them as deities, gave offerings to them. They became then things called spiritus loci or loci spiritus. Yeah, spirits of the place, spirits of the location.
See, I know the Romans as well. They sort of had their own practices like this because they had obviously different gods for different things, but they also had house gods for things inside the house. Yeah.
And give them offerings.
Yeah, cause yeah, to keep them happy.
The whole world of fairy comes into this too.
Mm.
All of this is banded under this elemental, this living in a different realm, linked closely to the elements. All of this comes into it. Now, oh dearie me, different atmospheric conditions, sensitivity of the particular person worshipping this deity sometimes made them become visible, which is why people have experiences even to this day. Even to this day, you've only got to look at the work of Andrew Collins and Graham Phillips in regards to the Black Alchemist and the Seventh Sword and the Green Stone and the Red Stone. And when you start looking at that they're coming across these entities. They're linked. Their experiences. They had those experiences. And this comes very much into it. And that's modern day. Well, 1970s. That's not quite so modern now, is it? I still feel like that yesterday on that one.
It was only yesterday for some of us.
Yeah, but people are still reporting these.
Yeah.
Modern day sightings of elemental or fairy folklore is still very prevalent. People still have these experiences today. And many authors wrote concerning them in terms which signify that they had actually beheld these inhabitants. So people are talking about them as if they've actually had interaction with them, that they're real.
I have.
Now, is that a belief system? One second. Is that a belief system that because we believe we see, or is that because they are actually there? Paul, tell us of your experience.
Okay, I went to a location called Kelvedon Hatch Nuclear Bunker, and there is a really weird feeling in part of the venue, and it has been reported that there is something in there, not negative, not a positive entity. It's an energy, but no one really knows what it is. It is quite mischievous sometimes, and I do believe at some point that we've actually caught something on camera that could be that elemental. I can put it into the group chat, not the group chat because we haven't got one, but I can put it. I can put it into the group, the Facebook group, and see what other people make of it, because it isn't quite a face, but it's trying to be, if that makes sense. But yeah, it was really weird. Where was it an elemental? I don't know. I'd like to think it is, but was it? I don't know. That's something that I can't explain.
Interesting.
I will put it up on the page.
When we did Kelvedon Hatch, we went in after this event and we doused.
Yes,
Richard did
you
it.
did.
Yeah.
I did it. We got a hit in exactly the same place. When we researched that particular area, we came up with an ancient Roman villa that's in the area. Now, we've got to do a lot more further research on this, haven't we, Richard?
Yes, it's going to take more research, but
A lot deeper research on this one, which we're working on in the background. But the belief, or our belief on this one, is that when they built Kelvedon Hatch, they dug out basically a hill, didn't they?
Yes,
yeah, they
that's
dug
right.
outside of Hill. Yeah,
And then they built a Faraday cage around it. And
Yeah.
the crossover point of the Faraday cage is the point of where this entity got trapped.
Yeah, I
And
do
we-
believe it's trapped there.
And we think that this is an elemental that got trapped inside the Faraday cage.
Yeah.
And that is what people experience when they go there. And he can take on any form. Because he's a corporal being, he'll take on the belief system on the form that is there, basically,
Yeah.
that he wants to. And it is an interesting piece of footage, guys. I suggest you do go to the Facebook page and check that out, that piece of footage out. And
But
tell us what
as
you
I
think.
said, it's not a negative being and it's not a positive being. It
No.
just is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I would describe an elemental as.
They're fascinating when you work with them in a spiritual way. They're fascinating creatures to work with, and they take all kinds of forms. I've came across, when I've worked on the astral planes, I've come across like a grey-looking elemental. Looks like a grey alien.
Okay.
So I can understand why that type of face is linked to alien. If it's an elemental being and it's taking that form, you get all sorts of weird and wonderful creatures on the astral plane. And that's what that was one of the ones I came across. And I only mention it because it is so relevant to grey alien. Do you know what I mean? I've seen one and I was like, oh my god, and yeah, weird.
Anyway, before we do carry on, I think it's about time for a break. So we'll take a break and we will be right back after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK Radio Network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Well, boys, what do you make of the first half? Looking at good old Parcel or Paracelsus?
Paracelsus, yes, it's certainly a name I haven't come across before, but I'll certainly be keeping an eye out for him in the future, and he's certainly someone to bear in mind.
Yeah, definitely. I have to write a blog on him, I think.
He's a very interesting guy. Very, very interesting guy. Now, we talked about how he broke it down into the various elements. The various elements are, boys?
Earth, wind, fire, and water.
Water, yeah.
Yeah. So should we have a look at these alleged entities that are supposed to inhabit the various worlds?
Yes, let's, because that's what the show's about.
Let's have a look at Earth elementals. Now, I'll use the name that Paracelsus, Parcel himself, used to basically talk about these. Now, bearing in mind, lots of different civilizations would call them different things. So he would call the Earth elementals gnomes.
Gnomes.
Yeah.
Gnomes, yeah, good old gnome.
Gnomes.
Gnomes. This is from the Greek genomus, which means earth dweller.
Right.
And these have power over rocks, flowers, trees, and minerals.
Excellent.
Love it. Traditionally guardians of hidden treasure.
Right.
Ooh, I bet there's loads on Oak Island.
They prefer caves and deep forests.
Okay.
Okay, but you would also maybe from other cultures, you might call them satyrs, pan, dryads, elves, brownies, little men of the woods, and
Smurfs.
they could be helpful or harmful to humans. I can't believe you keep bringing poxy Smurfs onto the
It's
table.
the same thing, isn't it?
It's so not.
It
They're
is.
blue. They're blue.
The Smurfs are blue, yeah.
Well, how do you know? You've never seen one.
What, a Smurf?
Yeah, have you seen a Smurf?
They're a cartoon character, Paul.
Don't matter. I'm sure there's plenty of gnomes on the telly as well.
Tusk! Tusk! That's what I'm saying. Now,
And elves are on the telly. They're in Lord of the Rings. Elves. They don't look like gnomes. Just saying.
Right.
in the case of gnomes, Paracelsus seems to have been influenced by mythological creatures like pygmies, reminiscent of fairies or gnomes. In the Iliad, the pygmies were described as diminutive humanoids, less than 3 spans in height, which is basically the distance between the tip of the thumb and the little finger on an open hand. It's not a lot, is it? It's not very big.
Yeah, 3 spans of that, yeah, must be about, probably, just over a foot high, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, they lived in remote mountainous regions where they conducted an ongoing war with the cranes. Now, the cranes would migrate to the pygmies' homelands every winter. Oh, now this is actually on pottery. They actually see this depiction of this war on pottery.
All right.
I know, right? Oh, dear. And they're actually depicted battling flocks of cranes or herons. We're actually talking like the bird cranes or herons, right? Now, the Greek writers placed them as living in various places around the world. Right, now this is no relation to the Congo Basin pygmies.
Right.
So don't think Congo Basin pygmies, that's who the Victorian explorers used to call tribes, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah. This is an elemental pygmy.
Yeah.
Right. Now now this war between the pygmies and the cranes actually started because of the queen of the pygmies. Girana made a foolish boast that she was actually more beautiful than the goddess Hera. Well, we know what Hera's like. She's not a particularly nice character. She's a bit bitter and twisted, is Hera. Not surprising, because she's the wife of Zeus, right? And basically, then she transformed Girana into a crane for her insolence.
Right, I see.
Okay, so the pygmies were said to lead regular raids into the clifftop homes of the birds, armed with bows, mounted on rams or goats. Rams and goats always get into the situation somehow, and would eat the eggs and the chicks,
I see.
right, which prevent them from growing into adult birds, which would further upset them. Do you know what I mean? So they would like raid to sort of diminish the population, shall we say?
Mhm.
Oh dear. Now, a lot of Greek and Roman writers describe the tales of the pygmies and their war. Pliny, we've come across Pliny before.
Yeah.
Natural history gives us the size and description of their mounted raids on the homes of the cranes, and basically stated that the homes were crude constructions of mud, plundered feathers, and eggshells. Pliny himself acknowledged that he differed from the earlier writings of Aristotle, who said that they lived underground. But otherwise, they kind of tally quite closely.
Right.
These pygmies are a bit evil, aren't they?
Why?
Well, because it's pretty much the same as Hitler bombing all the schools with our children in because they might grow up to be soldiers and fight against him. That's essentially what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well,
that's where no fair play. I thought they had articles of war that they had to abide by. That's terrible.
No, that's a modern construction of gentlemanly behaviour in war. That's modern.
They're not gentlemanly behaviour. That's poor play.
Well, next time I talk to a gnome or a pygmy, I'll tell them that that's your opinion of the subject.
Yeah, absolutely. No fair play.
Now, following their conception in Renaissance alchemical theory, gnomes became a popular subject of the 18th century fairy tale. So the Pygmy story is probably the inspiration, shall we say, for Paracelsus, gnome theory of earth elementals. But it took a life of its own, and Renaissance art became a popular fairy tale and romanticized, and their traits, it was down to the writer, basically.
Yeah.
But it was always short of stature, close association with the earth, and generally underground.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the term itself, gnome, was actually introduced by the narrative The Rape of the Lock by Alexander Pope.
Alexander Pope.
Not
yeah.
the Pope, Alexander Pope,
No.
sorry. I kind of just jumped that, didn't I? And the Pope satirizes an incident of a theft of a lock of hair from a young woman, Arabella, by her suitor. And the title derives from the Latin rapere, which means to snatch or carry off, an incident that is the narrative result in the ongoing feud between the two families.
Right.
Good old Alexander Pope.
Yeah.
Now, the poem itself mocks the relatively small incident by comparing it to the feuding of the Greek gods. So this lock of hair becomes like this massive feud and is represented in the story by the four elements. The differing nature and worldviews of gnomes themselves result in them battling futilely throughout the mock epic to influence the behaviour of the heroine. Reminds me of Midsummer Night's Dream a little.
Yeah.
It does a bit.
And but that particular poem was actually why the term gnome is in English is part of the English language now.
Yeah.
Now,
Awesome.
by the 19th century, they'd lost their individual character and came, linked into other characters like goblins. Yeah. And they're the opposite to fairies. They're ugly, slow, they're associated with darkness and underground places. Whereas fairies, you would see nature, light, beauty, floaty, airy.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
flickering
mean?
around, yes.
Now, they're generally considered the creation of fairy tales rather than living creatures, successfully hiding their existence from humanity. But there are reported sightings.
Apparently so.
My neighbour's got loads in her garden.
Wow. There was one that
They even go away on holiday, don't they, and send
Well,
postcards
some
back.
That's
times,
exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say. There's been cases where people have nicked the garden gnome out of the garden and taken it on holiday or travels and sent the poor old person who lived in the house who lost their gnome various photographs and postcards from various places that
Well,
this
then-
gnome has visited. I love that. I have to say, I love that. Wasn't that on This Life with Esther Ranson?
Something like that, wasn't it?
That's
Yeah.
life, yeah.
That's life, that's right. Back into day. But in 1979, a group of children reported that they witnessed a very bizarre procession in the grounds of Woollerton Park. That's close to where you are, Paul, in Nottingham.
It is, yeah. And they hold paranormal investigations there.
Well, you might come across this little procession of gnomes. They described a column of up to 30 tiny blue cars, each carrying a gnome. God, it's like Noddy. Each carrying a gnomish driver and a passenger wearing tights, blue tops, and bobble hats.
I've
Sounds
actually
like a
heard
Smurf
about
to
this
me.
before. This is quite a famous sort of
That
gnome sighting.
Yeah.
that sounds like a Smurf to me.
Maybe that's where the blue came in.
Yeah, not so funny now, is it, Gary?
Or maybe that was the inspiration for the writer of the Smurfs.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Now, this story actually received a lot of media attention at the time, but no further sightings of the strange vehicles or their occupants have ever been reported since that day. God knows what them kids were on. Kind of need to do a bit of investigation to see if they've been sitting maybe under an elder tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that one. But there has been an investigation carried out, or a consensus more than an investigation, carried out by the Fairy Investigative Society. This was in 2014, and a portion of 450 responses actually described sightings of gnomes.
Right.
That ain't that far back, 214.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, most people listening to this are going to actually associate gnomes with that little lovely little figurine that we have for our gardens, right?
Yep.
Now, this actually comes from 1937, and this is the Disney animation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yep. That was the
right.
first Disney film.
So that's where we get our modern day garden gnome.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, from that particular animation of Snow White. However, there have been older statues of wood and porcelain that date back to the late 1700s.
Right.
And you can't deny that their association with good gardens, you know, good healthy gardens and good luck actually remain one of the few links back to the origins of the, you know, the alchemical earth elemental origins.
Yeah, it's sort of based loosely on it, isn't it? So you know, it's a good it's a good tradition to have, isn't it? I don't mind seeing gnomes in people's gardens.
No, I think
cheers
every
people up, doesn't
garden
it?
should have a gnome.
Yeah.
I think every garden has, and every tended garden has a gnome in
Yeah.
some form or other.
Yeah. Okay, so we moving on next to the water elements. What do you know about them?
Right, now, water elements are undines. They're called undines, right, or undines. Now, they have power over water. Now, this is all water: streams, rivers, marshes, ponds, waterfalls, oceans, fountains, rain, mist, fog, anything to do with water. They are under this classification of a water element. Now, dearie me, this would also include mermaids, for anybody
Right.
that was wondering. Okay. They can appear as human beings as well as small creatures, and they are emotional, love, beauty. They like humans.
Mm-hmm.
And now in Tibetan and Indian cultures, there are nagas. They are half human, half serpent. If you go back to our mermaid show, you'll learn all about that. Now, again, you've got prosperity, hidden treasure,
Ooh.
and protectors. Remember our Mysteries of the Ancient Mariners show that we did?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all linked to that. And again, across culture, these are, if in Buddha, a naga, a female naga, was actually said to be the first being on earth to receive the esoteric teachings of him.
All right.
I think that was my mum.
And don't upset them because, well, sorry, your mum was the first human being on earth that gave these teachings to Buddha.
She's a naga.
Ah.
She don't stop.
I'm sure a lot of men would say that, a lot of women are those. Don't upset them because they can cause illness. Now, it's also interesting to note that there are many historical accounts of goddess appearances that are associated with water. Think the Virgin Mary and Lourdes, or Lords, as Paul likes to call it.
It's lords.
Yeah.
Okay. We've argued that point before us now. And, you know, lots of bodies of water have appearances of white ladies. Think of a King Arthur tale and Excalibur.
Yes. There's those. Yeah.
These are all water elementals. Now, so as gnomes have got links to the earth and all that work with that, these are all to do with water, right? And it isn't just physical water, it is that spiritual essence called humid or liquid ether. Now, that's vibratory rate is close to the element of water, and the undines are able to control it.
Oh.
Okay. Beauty is always a keynote with water spirits, and whenever we find them in art or sculpture, they are always gorgeous and graceful.
Yes, but can they be deceptive? What about sirens, or were they something totally different? Because I often associate the sirens with water.
Water element.
Yeah.
Mm.
But they weren't too good, were they? Because sailors used to have to tie themselves to the ship masts.
Well, they're very drawn to humans and don't upset them.
No,
So
okay.
mermaids haven't always had the best rap either, have they?
No, sort of
No.
luring sailors into the deep. Yeah.
Exactly. They control the water elements, so you have to give them. This is why you don't take women are supposed to be bad luck on ships, isn't it?
Well,
Because
yeah.
they'll upset the the water elemental beings, the mermaids and stuff, and they'll control the water. And if they think that it's a bit like, how dare you bring another woman onto this
Yeah,
arrival?
I think it's more to do with the fact that women are take over and they think they know how to sail the ship better than man, and they nag. They're naggers. That's it. So they won't have them.
Tumbleweed.
Tumbleweed moment there.
Tumbleweed moment.
So they. Well, I think Richard should stand up for me on that one.
No, carry on. You
always,
carry on digging your own hole, Paul.
They are always a female. They're always depicted as feminine.
Yeah.
It's a feminine symbol. It is natural that water spirits are always symbolized as female. Okay, so when you see waterfalls, you see them in the spray, you see them in moving rivers. When you think of Narcissus lying gazing into the water, he sees a reflection of himself. That's where we get beauty from. He gets so caught up with his own beauty that he drowns, basically. When you think of the habitat that's like, we talked about boggarts last week, that would fall into a water elemental. They live in marshes and fens, and then clear mountain lakes. Think of the lake with the mermaid that's nowhere near a sea. You've got stories of those going through. These are all subjects we've covered on past shows, guys. Basically, ancient philosophers said that every fountain had its own nymph, every ocean wave had its own oceanid. The water spirits were known as Oreades, Nereids, Limoniads, Naiads, water sprites, sea maids, mermaids, Potamides, and often their name would come from the stream or lake or sea in which they dwelt. Right. So I couldn't find actually an example of that, believe it or not. I was trying to find an example of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. I can't think of any, but
I couldn't think of any famous ones, to be fair.
So you're basically what you're saying is that if there was one of those in the Thames, it'd be like Thamesina or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they would be classed as. But I was trying really hard to find an example, and I didn't manage it. So maybe those names have been lost in the annals of history. Annals of history. What is that word? Is it annals or annuals?
Annals.
Annals. Because anal is definitely not the right word.
No, that's what
No.
you said it, yeah.
Oh dear.
Oh God.
Take time stamp off that.
Yeah, maybe we should get that removed. Or maybe we'll leave it in. Well, we'll see.
We'll leave it in because there's lots of information over the annals of time disappeared.
I've said it for the last few weeks and nobody said a word.
You're so never gonna live that down, I'm telling you.
Honestly, that's going to appear in the look back show. I feel. Oh dear. Now, a lot of the ancients would agree on certain features. So they all of these undines or undines, or however you want to say that word, resemble human beings in appearance and size. So though the ones inhabiting small streams and fountains were correspondingly in proportion, so if it's a small stream, we're going to get a smaller undine.
Yeah.
It was generally believed that they were capable of assuming the appearance. This is where we get to they will appear as you expect to see them, assuming the appearance of normal human beings and actually associating with men and women.
Oh, right. Actually interacting with them.
There are legends about these spirits and their adoption of families of fishermen.
Ooh.
And in every case, the Undines heard the call of the water and returned to the realm of the sea.
Isn't that sort of like the Little Mermaid type of story, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we came across one. Do you remember we came across one when we did the mermaid show? We talked about mermaids, didn't we? And we talked about a famous story that's down in Cornwall where she loved the singing in the church. So she would leave the sea to go to the singing, fell in love with
Yeah.
a local lad, and then convinced him to run away with her. And he ran away and he was never seen again. And it was said that he was drowned.
Yeah.
Remember that story we told?
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
remember that one.
Mm-hmm. So that's basically where the Little Mermaid tale comes from. Now, nothing is really known about the male Undines. The water spirit did not establish homes in the same way than the gnomes did. They lived in coral caves under the ocean or amongst the reeds on the banks of the river or the shores of the lake. There's not like City of the Mermaids kind of scenario.
Oh, right.
Whereas,
So they're...
whereas gnomes, you kind of believe that they've got like a little city in a mountain somewhere, very Lord of the Ringsy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? You know, you can see that happening. You can't see that with water sprites.
Right.
Now, in the Celts, there is a legend that Ireland was peopled before the coming of the present inhabitants by a race of semi-divine characters. These were the coming of the modern Celts that retired into the marshes and fens that remain there to this day.
Okay.
Okay. Now this all goes back to. Do you remember us talking about the Tuatha De Danann?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a mythical race that the Celts allegedly fought with, who we beat because we had iron. This is very paraphrasing a lot of what went on there. We beat them, and they had to retire to a different realm. Yeah, because we beat them and we've got iron. That's why they can't cross over. And that is the start of a lot of the fairy lore legend that comes through.
Oh,
Okay.
right. I see.
Right? Elementals are kind of the same. So these are the present, the inhabitants before any human went to Ireland were all these elementals. They were having a lovely time. And then when this strange race of semi-divine creatures came, the Tuatha De Danann, they then retired, the elementals then retired to their own elements.
Right. Okay.
So it's, war over property rights is not a new thing. Even in legend, it is a thing. You wonder why we're a warring race. Do we put the war on these things? Did that really happen? Who knows, right? Because it's never been proved. So little ones, little undines, will live under lily pads in houses
Oh.
of moss sprayed by waterfalls. Oh,
Oh. I want one.
I know, so do I. They worked with vital essences and liquids in plants, animals, and human beings, and they're in everything that contains water.
Right.
And when you see them, they resemble the goddesses of Greek.
Okay.
Yeah, so they've got that flowing robes and beautiful hair and gorgeous faces and just gorgeous, basically.
Yeah. And pouring water from a jug from their shoulder. That's what they usually have, isn't it?
That's right. That's
Ah.
depicted in tarot.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's one of the depictions in the tarot. That's what it's relating to.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, there are families of undines, each with their peculiar limitations. So, basically, their ruler, Nexa, love, honour, and serve entirely. Their temperament is said to be vital, and to them, they have been given the throne of the western corner of creation. They're quite friendly, they're quite emotional, and they like humans and they like to serve mankind. Right, so these are the ones that you're seeing are riding on dolphins and great fish and have a lovely affinity to flowers and plants and stuff like that. So this is just one example of that. But over
Nice.
all of them, Poseidon or Neptune, depending on what culture you want to look at it, resides. He's like the king of the water elements from the Greek
Okay.
perspective. Yeah,
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
yeah. Isn't it good, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So like each like little faction, depending on where they are, will have like their own little
Workforce.
kingdom.
Yeah.
Cool, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk fire elementals.
Fire.
Ooh,
Fire. Right. Now, Paracelsus called these salamanders. These have power over flame and smoke. They don't communicate directly with humans.
All right.
You can placate them with incense smoke, basically. Now, they appear as little balls of light, fireballs, tongues of fire, blue flame, that sort of thing. That resonates with my little Mr. Ruckus
Yeah.
of an experience he's had, which is a blog that is soon to be released. Or is
Yep.
that in the book?
No, I think it's a standalone. That'd be in the book.
You'll have to buy the book to find out about that experience, everybody. Now, in medieval literature, they have been described as little lizard-like beings. Salamanders. When you think of a salamander,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, little fish. Yeah.
That little happy
Little
smiley face
fish.
in the
Salamander fish.
yeah.
No, you think of them as lizards.
Well,
Yeah.
it's,
Oh,
it
yeah,
is in
it's
a way, same thing.
a newt then.
Yes, Newtus, but of fire, not
Yeah, of
water,
fire, yeah.
because salamanders would be a water element because they live in water.
Yeah.
But he called them salamanders anyway. Now, it appears as the St. Elmo's fires. Think of St. Elmo fire.
Yeah, it used to happen in the rigging of old sailing ships.
Yeah.
Correct.
Which is sort of it was a natural effect, you know. I mean, it's quite well known. I mean, airline pilots see it occasionally as well.
Do they?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
you get St Elmo's fire on occasion around aircraft at quite high altitudes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Mm.
Think of the Northern Lights
Yes.
Yeah.
or the Southern Lights, depending on which hemisphere you're in.
Mhm.
That is all fire elementals.
Right.
Now, they live in the attenuated spiritual ether, which is the invisible fire element of nature. So without the material fire can't exist. A match cannot be struck, nor will flint and steel give off their spark without the assistance of a salamander.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Oh,
He
yeah, I
immediately
see.
appears evoked by friction. So friction is fire energy element.
And I suppose sort of going back in the day, that was sort of like the only way you could actually sort of generate fire was through friction, wasn't it? You know,
Yeah.
and even today, you know, lighters and everything, it all works on the same principle, doesn't it?
I can imagine now thousands of people all over the world just trying to rub two salamanders together.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that.
No.
Now, man can communicate successfully with salamanders owing to the fiery element in which they dwell. So everything is resolved to ashes that comes into their presence, right? So you need to do your compounds of herbs and perfumes, which is basically incense, right?
Right.
Now, when
Yeah.
the incense is burned, the vapors, smoke that rises, was a suitable medium for the expression of the salamanders.
Oh, right. So you're actually providing a state which they know they can enter in and converse with you.
Correct.
Right. Yes.
So is
I get it.
why you do saging when you clearing and use sage, you're getting a big giant salamander coming in to get rid of the ghosts?
No, that's not part of it. The sage is cleansing. Okay, so when you sage, it's incredibly cleansing. So it basically is too pungent for entities and it would be damaging to them on the etheric plane
Right. Okay.
for them to want to reside where the sage is burnt.
So it has nothing to do with salamanders coming in and going out. Get out.
No, it would.
Okay.
It's a different belief system.
Okay.
So if you want to relate it to an element, you are linking into salamanders because it's fire elemental.
Yeah.
But your intention is not to invoke fire elements. Your intention is the driving force between the purging properties and the cleansing
okay.
properties of sage.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah?
Yep.
So there we go. Oh dear. Now, they are varied in their grouping and arrangement. They are familiar in the same appearance, size, and dignity. So some will be visible as small balls of light, whereas others you'll see as tongues of fire running through the fields when they're burning the crops and stuff like that. So each one will be different compared to what you're working with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
A bit like a stream is completely different from an ocean, Undyne. You know, I mean, a salamander will be the same sort of thing. It will be relevant to the force it's seen within.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, medieval investigators of the nature spirits were of the opinion that the most common form of salamander was actually a lizard in shape, a foot or more in length, and visible is the twisting and crawling in the midst of the fire. Think of fire scrying. We see shapes within the fire.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now
Done that
another.
loads.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal way of scrying. Actually, another group was described them as huge flaming giants in flowing robes, protected with sheets of fiery armor. Now, I would imagine anybody who saw that was probably in the middle of a forest fire.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
tree
Big tree there. Yeah.
on fire.
I think
Unfortunately,
mostly Australian, maybe.
or Turkey at the moment is having
Yeah,
horrendous
that's
problems,
true.
or a lot of fires along the Mediterranean coast at the moment. Our thoughts go out to all of those people affected. And certain medieval authorities, among them the Abbé de Villers, held that the Zarathustra, which is all basically, maybe we should look into the Zoroastrian theology, which is actually where Zozo comes from.
Okay.
Oh, does he? Oh, all right.
Yeah, where all that daemon Zozo is supposed to have risen from. That's an incredibly interesting thing. There's a lot of modern day perceptions actually have come all the way back from that, but that's a different topic for a different day. Okay. Now, he was the son of Vesta, who was believed to have been the wife of Noah, and the great salamander Oromasis. Yeah. These are all influences for the visual that we now have of the fire elemental being what we believe it to be now. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, one of the most important subdivisions of the salamanders was the Actinici. Now, these creatures appeared only as indistinct globes. This is interesting. Why is this interesting to us as paranormal investigators?
Because it's the orbs, isn't it? It's just
Yes.
yeah. I don't even want that subject.
And
It's just like head in hands, jobby.
no, I don't disagree, but we know scientifically it can occur in nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Balls
Okay.
of light. Yeah.
Exactly. So it becomes part of our psyche going back generations. So when we see an orb, it becomes more than just a light anomaly from a camera. It becomes something beyond the camera itself, which is why people have a
Yeah.
hard time believing the difference because it's so deep in our psyche. When we see forks of flames on masts and riggings of ship, the St. Elmo's fire. When we see ball lightning,
Yep.
yeah, when we see these globes of light that seem to float over the surface of water.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
these
that's
are
Will o' the
natural.
Wisp, isn't it?
That's it. These are a will-o'-the-wisp. Exactly. That's another example. These are all natural occurring, scientifically proven phenomena that occur in nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
How weird would they have been to a person that doesn't know the science back in the medieval times when they're witnessing these things?
Yeah.
These things become part of your psyche. They transmute, they evolve over time. Nowadays, we take a photograph in a paranormal location, get an orb on the camera, we go, hashtag, it's a demon. It's not. It's actually an anomaly within the camera itself.
Well,
To do with
it brings me back to the popular paranormal investigator in the US that says everything's demon. What it is, it's an air elemental when he's just past wind or wet himself.
My point is that's why we make the sudden assumption it's spiritual,
Yeah.
elemental, because we have these belief systems that have been around for a long time, linking it to a spiritual corporal being.
Mm.
That's why we have a hard time separating the two, and why there is still, even with all the research that's gone into orb photography, basically, that some people still say, yeah, but 99.9% of them are proven, but the rest are spirit.
I know one got me. I soon got rid of him on my Facebook page. He just turned around and said, "Well, that's your opinion." Hello, scientific fact I've just given you, and it's my opinion. What an idiot.
Well, you can't, if someone's got a belief system, you can't change it. We talked about that with Andy last week in Conspiracy Theory.
Yeah.
Not last week.
Week before, wasn't it?
The week before. Yeah, exactly right. Now, they are the strongest and most powerful of the elements, and their ruler, allegedly, are the flaming spirits called the jinn.
Oh yes.
Oh, I
I've
know
heard of the
them.
gin. Yeah.
We all know about jinns, don't we, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gordon's is quite nice.
Salamanders are classed as dangerous, and sages are warned to keep away from them. There are benefits from studying them, but you have to be very careful you don't have pay the price. Fire consumes everything it touches.
Yeah.
Okay. The ancients actually associated heat with the south, and that was the corner of creation and assigned to the salamanders.
Right.
They're tempestuous even, temperament, and they work through their emotional nature by means of body heat.
Okay.
Okay. But without their assistance, we wouldn't be warm.
Oh, I think I could cope.
I couldn't. I like to be warm. Don't like cold.
No,
So
I'm
let's
not
go
a
on
radiator.
to air elementals, sylphs,
Yeah, they sound so much better.
right? The group name is sylphs. They have power over clouds, snow, gases, winds. They prefer mountain tops. They are in the air around us. And remember, I talked to you guys about working with the elementals, and I was in a gale one
Yeah.
night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you
I
know,
know the
you
story. Yeah.
link into those, and they cleared the path. They are the gossamer winged fairies. The elements of air are also associated with muses, genius, and inspiration. They're
Right.
said to be a blessing or a curse. They are changeable, eccentric. They are unfathomable.
That's the word.
That's the word. They're in the very atmosphere of the earth.
Yeah.
Okay. They're very subtle. They're a lot more subtle.
Now, this is what I was saying about elementals just in general. They're not a negative energy, they're not a positive energy, they just exist. And they've got a special job to do to look after these particular elements, hence the elemental name.
Hello. Is anyone there?
Yes. I was pondering what he said. Anyway, Plato said, and upon the earth are animals and men, some in a middle region, others elementals dwelling about the air as we dwell about the sea, others in islands which the air flows around near the continent, and in a word, the air is used by them as the water and the sea are by us, and the ether is to them what the air is to us. Moreover, the temperament of their seasons is such that they have no disease, and they live much longer than we do.
Well, there you go.
So they are all to do with sight and hearing and smell, and they are there in the other senses. And this is almost like the perfection of the senses. This one is. This is pure. They're purer than water, air elementals.
Okay.
Now, they do have temples and sacred places in which their gods dwell, and they hear their voices and receive their answers and conscious of them and hold and converse with them. So they, they are there. They're amongst, again, what do they say? To gain godliness or to gain insight, you go high. So you can
Right.
hear the voices better.
Mm-hmm.
So you go up to the top of a mountain, no better place, right?
Yeah, which a lot of people do, don't they? A lot of sort
Yeah.
of seers and sages and even religious people, they go on retreats up high mountains, don't they, and stuff.
Tibetan
Yeah,
monks are up there as well, aren't they?
yeah, Tibetan monks. Well, that's a very good example, Paul. Yeah.
Exactly. But fairies in general are elementals. So when we looked at Anthony Todd Thompson, he said the fae and the fairies are evidently of Scandinavian origin, although the name of fairy is supposed to be derived from, or rather is a modification of the Persian peri, an imaginary benevolent being whose province it was to guard men from the maledictions of evil spirits. But with actual more probability, it referred to the Gothic fagia, as the term elves is from alpha, which is an appellation of a whole tribe.
Right.
Okay, so if this derivation of the name fairy be admitted, we may date the commencement of the popular belief of the British fairies to the period of the Danish conquest. They were supposed to be diminutive, aerial beings, beautiful, lively, beneficent in their intercourse with mortals, inhabiting a region called fairyland, commonly appearing on Earth at intervals, when they left traces of their visits in beautiful green rings where the dewy sward had been trodden in their moonlight dances.
Oh, yes. So
Very fanciful.
from the Danish conquest, so come over with the Vikings then.
So it could. I mean, I know. Obviously, going back quite a long time, there was a lot of reports of seeing cities in the sky.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Is like a fairyland type thing?
No.
That's more of a. They still happen today, don't they? But
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
isn't it more of a mirage? Isn't it?
Yeah, that's more of an atmospheric thing,
But
isn't
then
it?
that's how we know it. I'm talking when going back to the period that we're talking about on the show
Yeah.
to someone that didn't know about atmospheric pressures and things like that to see it,
Yeah.
it'd be like a city in the sky.
Well,
So
yeah.
maybe they would
Probably.
put that as a fairyland type of idea.
Yeah.
Possibly. I mean, the city in the skies are a very strange phenomenon in their own right. And there's been accounts, even a modern one, recently. I say recently, it's probably the last 10 years, of a sighting of a city in the sky, but they aren't always mirages or hallucinations because they're seen by a lot of people. What they are, we don't know. I don't think they've ever been explained.
No, I
No,
think
I thought they were
basically explained.
reflections as well.
Yeah. But
It's not. There was a
they
case of a
seem to
warship.
happen. They seem to happen in the Far East a fair bit, particularly China and Indonesia and places like that. Whether
There's a famous account of a British warship seeing a city in the sky, and they saw people, and they saw the people in the. It seems that the people in this city that they were witnessing could see the ship and were waving, and it lasted for a good couple of days while this ship was languishing in like the doldrums. It was very strange. They weren't near land, so for it to be a reflection or atmospheric pressures, it's a very strange account when you read about it, and it's not a story, it's not a fictional story, it's an account somebody wrote about what they saw. It's documented in letters. So it's not as easy sometimes as saying, well, it's all, you know, some of it is when you look at the salt lakes, you know, like those, there's mirages that have been seen from a city that's like, I don't know, quite a long way away. That is because of the reflection, but there are other accounts of cities in the sky that aren't as easily explained as that. But I don't know. I don't think that is particularly what they're referring to in this particular incident, because the sylphs are all about that ether of air more than, you know, we see intangible things like snowflakes and clouds. They work with the undines to supply the moisture, but the wind is what is the vehicle.
Do
you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah.
The wind is supposed to be the highest in the vibratory rate. That's when you do that. They live hundreds of years, often attaining to thousands of years. They never seem to grow old. And the leader of the sylphs, how do they know the leaders and where they reside? I don't know. It's just, I think this is where you become a personification from a on it. Is called Paracelsus, who is said to dwell on the highest mountain of the earth. And the female sylphs were called sylphids. Little too close for syphilis for my liking. Now, it is believed that the sylph salamanders and nymphs have much to do with the oracles of the ancients. These are the ones that spoke to the great philosophers. These are the ones that are giving that information through.
Yeah, so they were the ones, were they?
Not so much fire. This is all to do with the sylphs and the nymphs. These are the ones that are bringing information forward. They sometimes assume human form, not always, but only short periods of time. And again, they're no larger than humans, but often considerably smaller. Think of fairies and our belief in fairies, and we've got the Tinkerbell size, haven't we? And then we've got like Pan, and when you start looking at fairies, the modern personification is Tinkerbell. And again, Disney has got a lot to answer for on this one.
Yeah, well, they would. Because essentially they're teaching our children, aren't they? Because, you know, you get a noisy kid, the first thing you do is plonk them in front of the telly, and what happens to be on Disney Plus? You know? Yeah.
Now, it is said that sylphs have accepted human beings into their communities and have permitted them to live there for a considerable period. In fact, Paracelsus, wrote of such an incident, but of course it could not have occurred while the human stranger was in his physical body. So he's saying that, do you remember I talked to you about Thomas Rhymer?
Yeah.
Who went and lived with the fairies?
Yeah.
He's saying that he couldn't have done that. He couldn't have done that in his physical body because his physical body is a gross element. It's the gross side of that element. So he wouldn't have been able to have utilized that to cross over. So maybe Thomas Rhymer actually was in a state of coma, living with the fairies in his etheric state.
Or state of meditation.
Or in a state of meditation, and then now and again woke up from his meditation, told tales about fairies, and then passed out again. Who knows? Yeah. But the muses of the Greeks are believed to have been sylphs. Now, these spirits would gather around the mind of the dreamer, the poet, the artist, inspiring them with the knowledge and beauties and workings of nature. Okay, these are given the eastern corner of creation. Now, think about it, right? This is where occult work comes in. This is the whole point of various elements have various corners, north, south, east, and west.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? These are the east. Wind is east.
Okay.
Fire, south.
Yeah.
Do you see how this is now starting to play together and where we get these understandings from?
See, I would have put the fire element in the east because doesn't the sun rise in the east?
It sets in the west.
Yeah, so it's a fireball, isn't it? So I would have assumed they would have gone.
But generally, wind travels east to west generally around the Earth.
Okay.
And south, I mean, this is all from a northern hemisphere perspective, because south is warmer to us, and the further we travel south, the warmer it gets. So
I suppose,
I can see that as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So they were given the eastern corner of creation. That is mirthful, changeable, eccentric. Okay. Inconsistent. Think of how the wind blows. It's not consistent, is it?
No.
It's gusty.
Yeah. One like it bombards from one side, then it bombards you from the other. And then you end up with spiky hair.
Yeah, it's like all over the show, isn't it?
Yeah.
Playful. Now, this is to do with gases within the human body, and this is how it links to the physiological. Each of the elements will affect different areas of the body, and we go into flatulence.
Right.
Yep.
Nervous system, because it's inconsistent. They're not fixed. They're very floaty. Air, floaty. That's where you go with it.
Yep.
Anything that's inconsistent and constantly moving and variable, air within the body. Okay, so the last thing I want to touch on, which brings us nicely into a link for next week's show, is angels. Angels have occasionally been suggested to be elementals. They're not. The law of angels clearly has them lording over the elementals. They're a race different from the elementals.
Yeah.
They are pure spirit, not natural elements. There's your difference. And when we talk about the pentagram, we talk about the 4 elements and the 5th being spirit. And that is where angels reside. And that is a topic for a different day.
Next week, in
Look forward
fact.
to that one.
Next week, in fact.
Yeah.
You guys wanted, we responded. We have the fantastically amazing Mr. Matt Arnold in the studio with us again next week. He is an absolute authority on the topic of our Christian belief system,
Yeah.
and paranormal
yeah.
within the Bible, and that belief system. And my goodness me, he literally blew our minds last time, didn't he? And the feedback from that show was you wanted more. So we are bringing you more. We are bringing the amazing Matt Arnold back into the studio to have another discussion in regard to the religious law and angels and the elements that work with that and the fall of those angels. We're talking all things like that next week. I'm well looking forward to that. Can you tell?
Yeah,
Looking
I think
forward to
so.
that one.
Really looking forward to that show. And that's basically it, guys.
Okay.
Wow.
So does that kind of explains why we have corners in regard to occultism linked to different elements of nature and how they link into different entities that reside in those areas.
Yeah.
And how we can utilize that in various ritual to affect various things in our current life. It's amazing, right?
It is, isn't it? Absolutely. Very interesting.
Fabulosa. Right, what news have we got to report?
Well, we've still got the book available. If you go to www.paranormalconcept.com, you can go to the publications page and look at all the books that we've got for sale. Available from Amazon all over the world. Just click on the book and it'll take you to the correct pages. I think that's it, really.
Cool.
Yeah. We haven't got. I think we've got a blog out after next week's show. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. That'll be all.
Awesome.
Yeah. We've been busy.
Busy.
Yeah.
Always are. We always are.
Absolutely. Anything else that you can think of, Richard?
No, I think you managed to hit all the bases there. Good show. Enjoyed it. Found out a lot about it. Especially our Mr. Parcel. We'll be tracking him down.
Yeah, look into him, guys. A lot of modern belief systems have come off the back of that one.
Right.
Definitely.
Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yep.
So, we better wrap this show up then, my
But
beautiful boys.
before you do, if
Okay.
any, if in the future this show gets lost in the annals of time, we've got it on the website paranormalconcept.com. So it'll always be there, so you'll never forget it.
You'll never forget it.
You carry on there, Kerry.
I will never forget that one. I knew I was saying it wrong. I've been saying it for weeks. I can't believe you let me go on like that.
Oh, it's more fun that way.
Yeah, that disappeared into the annals of time. It's fine.
Jeepers. Jeepers, my beautiful boys. Anyway, on that note, say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.